Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin in Kenya, where Daniel Arap Moi, a former school teacher who became Kenya's longest-serving president and presided over years of repression and economic turmoil fueled by runaway corruption, is dead. He was 95. Moi's death was announced by President Uhuru Kenyatta in a statement on the state broadcaster this morning. President Kenyatta declared an unspecified period of national mourning. Moi, who ruled Kenya for 24 years, had been in hospital for more than a month. Despite being called a dictator by critics, Moi enjoyed strong support from many Kenyans and was seen as a uniting figure when he took power from the founding president Jomo Kenyatta, who died in office in 1978. Some allies of the ailing Kenyatta, however, tried to change the constitution to prevent Moi, then the vice president, from automatically taking power upon Kenyatta's death. Well, the end of a long, eventful life, 95 years. Yeah. And 24 out of those 95 years, he served as president of Kenya. As the report said, he had his supporters and had his critics. Exactly. A lot of people praise him for being such a unifying force for 24 years. But that's about where it ends. The corruption allegations. Economic turmoil. Yes, especially the corruption. True. He was linked to a scandal which robbed Kenya of 10% of their annual GDP, the Goldenberg scandal. And that never really left. That stain never really was washed off his legacy. Yeah. But of course, Uhuru Kenyatta, the current Kenyan president, would declare national mourning. So a lot of, how do I put this? Public figures, presidents and what have you, it really depends on your successor.
Doesn't it remind you a bit of when Mugabe passed away as well? The same response of how it was that mixed feeling and that mixed reaction from the public, whereby there was that sort of, okay, we've lost a leader and someone that a lot of people loved for certain reasons, but at the end of the day, certain things cannot be overlooked, right? Like you said, it ends basically at a certain part of him being a unifying factor. What else? And that's where it becomes problematic when we discuss the death of people like ex-President Moi. You know, it's mixed feelings for a lot of people.
No, but as I was saying, for a lot of people, being a unifying factor is enough because Kenya is a multi-ethnic country, same as Nigeria. So the lack of ethnic tensions is a big deal. It cannot be overstated, especially now in Nigeria, how divided we are. If we could have a unifying factor, I think we'd be quite pleased. Yes. So I'm not trying to downplay that.
No, I know.
But what I was trying to say was that Uhuru Kenyatta, the fact that he is in power now is going to help shape the sort of historical perspective people take to Daniel Arap Moi, because himself and the late Moi were very close. Yes. Moi wanted Uhuru Kenyatta to succeed him. The electorate had other ideas, but eventually he has now assumed the office of the president of Kenya. They were really close. If it was a sort of political opponent, then this whole national mourning might not actually be happening.
I think that's where I was trying to get at.
It depends on who is in power at the time of the passing. Because although he's different from Mugabe in the sense that, to my knowledge, he was never associated with murder or mass murder like Mugabe was. He was associated with dictatorship, which is unfortunate, with corruption, and that's sit-side syndrome. 24 years in power for anybody.
It's a very long time.
When it's not a monarchy.
Honestly, till 2002. And, you know, it's so important what you said as well about how, for a lot of people, being a unifying factor is just enough. Look at how Rwanda, for example, how simple policy saying you can no longer refer to yourself as Hutu or Tutsi literally put the country together as you can only refer to yourself as Rwandan. And if you then bring it home and you look at Nigeria today and the state of insecurity across Nigeria and how a lot of that is fueled by ethnic tensions, you see the importance of having a leader that can actually put that unifying factor there for society to develop. It's so important, and it starts with policy. Rwanda started it with policy, putting it into law that you cannot refer to yourself as Hutu or Tutsi anymore. You're Rwandan and that's all. Do you think we can get there someday, or do you think that is something that it's feasible for Nigeria as well?
I hope we do. And I really think, for example, in the Nigerian context, one of the greatest compliments you can pay anybody as a Nigerian is to say that they're detribalized. It is that much of a big deal in a society like ours to be a unified. It's not, I wouldn't downplay that, but unfortunately, the level of corruption and the sort of clampdown on political opponents is sort of, well, as nobody's perfect, I guess. It all balances out in the end.
It does, doesn't it? But truth over balance always prevails.
Former Chief Justice of Nigeria, CJN, Justice Walter Samuel Nkanu Onogen, wearing a white tuxedo coat on a pair of black trousers, chaired the Nigerian Bar Association's Calabar Branch 2020 dinner on Friday, 31st January 2020. He was there with Nkoyo, his wife. This was Onoge's first public appearance after he left office on 5th April 2019 after a protracted battle with the executive arm of government that accused him of misconduct. At the dinner, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award given by the NBA branch. In his appreciation speech, he said, in quote, "It is good to be home and be part of the private bar. This was where I started my practice as a private lawyer, and I feel good coming back. I want to say thank you to the NBA and judicial officers who stood by me. I thank you for all that you have done, and I want to present myself. I am not dead. I'm even good looking." End quote.
Love that.
Yes. And then he went on to share this parable of the lion and the antelope, and that was kind of a reference, I imagine, to his travails at the hand of the executive, because the punchline in that parable that he gave was, "Why didn't you say you were trying to eat me the whole time?" I said, "Why did you go and beat around the bush?"
You know?
So I guess that's what he was trying to say. And it's not a tuxedo coat, it's a tuxedo.
Yes.
Anyway, but it's good that he was all dapper and well-dressed. He survived that horrendous scandal. But I do wonder what he means by saying, referring to those who stood by him. In my personal recollection, the silence from a lot of quarters who ought to have defended him was deafening, and I'm sure that disappointed him. But I guess he's trying to be positive now that it's all behind him, and he must feel vindicated on some level.
He must. I mean,
since subsequent events have unfolded.
Honestly, I mean, like you read in the report, this was his first public appearance since the 5th of April 2019. That's a very long time. So, I mean, he handled it well. I think he added a very light and nice touch to it, and it's good that he got this recognition as well. So, yeah, I concur with you on that.
Well,
shall we take a look at what we have as well on the news headlines today, although we will cover it more when Mr. Ifeni comes on to the show today. But this was another big topic that we wanted to discuss, which is the fact that they met Buhari, Lawan and Gbajabiamila yesterday to discuss and agree on intensifying the fight against insecurity. And we discussed this yesterday ahead of their meeting, and now they've had that meeting, so...
We're going to be discussing it every day, quite frankly, for the foreseeable future, for as long as insecurity continues to just be the huge thorn in the side of the Nigerian populace right now. I'm really glad that the second branch of the, arm of government is taking the executive to task on this matter.
Absolutely, and it's good that it seems that they all came to some sort of agreement, or they all concurred at least and agreed on the same thing. But we'll discuss it more, Mr. Ifeni comes on.
Definitely. Now to the United States, where Democrats were hoping there will be an indication of who is likely to take on President Trump in this November's election. However, in what should have been a simple process has resulted in no result for any districts being declared. The Democratic Committee in Iowa released a statement saying party officials had to double-check results due to inconsistencies in the initial count. It's understood that a number of text systems are being used, as well as photos and a paper trail are being used to try and validate the results. All the main candidates ended up leaving their headquarters in the states, making their way to the next battleground, New Hampshire. Former Vice President Joe Biden told his supporters it was crucial that they get the results right.
Well, the Iowa Democratic Party is working to get this result, get them straight. And I want to make sure they're very careful in their deliberations. And indications are, from our indications, it's going to be close. We're going to walk out of here with our share of delegates. We don't know exactly what it is yet, but we feel good about where we are. And look, so it's on to New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, and well beyond.
Joe Biden there, and I'm cringing.
Honestly,
I really am cringing because even though the results haven't come out, I've seen some of the precincts that have been published on social media. It's not looking great for Biden. But really right now, but all of them, nature abhors a vacuum. In the absence of results, everybody went on this victory rally. Klobuchar started it. Buttigieg, Biden.
I love
that's my guy.
And look at how much he's ranked up since he started the Democratic race. Honestly, I think he can definitely make it one day.
Warren, all of them gave a victory speech as if they all won the Iowa caucus.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Clearly, there can only be, 3 winners, depending on what you're looking at. But right now, the Democrats sort of have egg on their faces. It's so embarrassing that they could not get this right.
Honestly, it's a very terrible situation, especially given everything that the Democrats are going through right now and the position that they're in politically across so many different realms. We can start off with the impeachment inquiry and how that's going, the ripple effects that may bring for them negatively. And then we have a situation where here, like you said, I'm cringing for Biden in that video. I really am. It does all seem very, very messy, Tunde.
It does. And, this is no way to really go about trying to unseat the incumbent, especially one as vicious as a Donald Trump.
Honestly speaking,
it's not looking so good right now.
Honestly, it really isn't, because at the end of the day, and we said this, I believe, 2 weeks ago when we were discussing the impeachment inquiry, at this rate, with the way things are going, Trump is looking to stand an even stronger chance this year ahead of the elections, and that's scary for a huge populace, but also agreeable with a huge populace. And the Democrats really need to look at their tactics, because I don't know if they've been working. They haven't.
Yes, and then you now have this Iowa caucus. Now they've all gone to New Hampshire without the results. I mean, it just looks completely
messy,
ridiculous.
honestly.
And it now makes somebody like that, Tom Steyer and what's his name, Bloomberg, who skipped the Iowa caucuses entirely. It now makes them look as if they knew something, right? Because this is really this lack of efficiency. I think they were trying to use a particular app, and the app has sort of let them down. So they now have to resort to actually using the hard copy. Yes. Embarrassing.
It's very embarrassing, honestly. But on that note, let's go on a break.
So we'll be back with more of the news headlines. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News.
So we have with us Rotas Odiri for Business News.
Yes, we do. Good morning, Rotas.
Good morning, good morning. So what we're talking about today is just the low interest rate environment that we currently have. So this week, every new month, the federal government issues a bond, a savings bond. It's issued on their behalf by the DMO, the Debt Management Office. And so this particular year, for 2020, we've got a 2-year bond and a 3-year bond. So if you were to invest in it in February 2020, you'd get the 2-year bond paid back, your principal, in a couple of years' time in 2022, and then the 3-year bond will be paid back in 2023. So we have that up for our viewers right now to take a look at the federal government savings bond. Now, the thing is, though, is that with where inflation is right now, you have to gauge the interest that you're earning, benchmark it against inflation. Inflation right now, due to the border closure, it's been increasing and so on and so forth, driven mostly by food inflation. Inflation right now is at 11.98%. So if you were to benchmark what you are earning with this particular bond, again, the coupon rates for the 2-year are 5.91%, for the 3-year is 6.91%. You have to subtract inflation from what you're getting in interest in order to get your real rates of return. And so for right now, with where we are, those rates are actually negative. You were to subtract 11.98% from your 2-year bond of 5.91 or from your 3-year bond of 6.91, you will get negative rates of 5 and 6%. So essentially, investors pretty much don't have a positive rate of return with where things are now in this current interest rate environment. And another interesting thing is that if you were to compare this year's issue of February 2020 to February 2019, big difference. Back in 2019, the interest rate that was offered, the coupon rate, was 12.5%, right? That's a 2-year bond. For this year, it's 5.91. So if you were to invest ₦1 million in that particular bond for last year, you would have gotten 120,000. Yeah? Now, what happens is when you invest in the bond, it's paid quarterly over a 4-year period. Okay, we have the real rates of return right now for our viewers. So you can see the real return for the 2-year is negative 6.07%. On the 3-year is negative 5.07. Again, you are taking the coupon rates for those bonds and subtracting your current inflation. So anyone that's investing right now, you must say, whatever I'm getting in interest, what is that compared to where inflation currently is? So right now, that's a negative real return. So basically, the gist of this is that if you're investing, you essentially have to make sure that what you're getting is above where inflation is right now. And so the interesting thing, compared to last year, ₦1 million investment, you're getting 120,000 in interest. That money is now spread out quarterly, so it's paid 4 times a year. So if you're going to invest in this February now, you would get it in, I believe it's June, August, November, and then the following February. So those 4 months. So you take your 120,000 and divide it by 4, you get a 30,000 naira interest coupon payments spread out over each quarter. That was last year, 2019. This year, that same million naira will get you only about 59,000. And if you were to break that down into quarterly payments spread out, you're only getting about 17,000. So it shows how interest rates have dropped precipitously.
No incentive for investors.
Right. There's almost no incentive.
Why on earth would you tie down your money for 2 years?
Honestly, when it's a negative rate on return.
Right.
It's interesting because initially the government had come out to say that the border closure, which you first mentioned, would have a deadline of January 31st, which we're now past that date. And here we are discussing the fact that our borders are still closed.
Correct.
And this is also leading to the problem.
Right.
So do you think that the government, if listening in on this, are going to find any incentive whatsoever to maybe re-strategize or rethink their current strategies? Because there's no incentive.
There really isn't much of an incentive. Also, in addition to that, so the border closure is one issue. What we're really seeing here is the central bank's balance sheet. Yeah. So the central bank essentially is the one that pushed out banks and PFAs, PFAs that deal with pensions, from investing in what's called OMO securities, open market operations. So those OMO securities, they were offering them to foreign investors who were coming in. That right now, those rates about 13 or 14%. They're high, but they're limited to the number of people that can invest in them. So it's just foreign investors and banks. By pushing everybody else out, right? That money had to go somewhere else, and so the increase in demand is what has now pushed down rates. But to answer your question, yes, the government has to at least at some point think about re-strategizing from the border closure issue to the central bank's balance sheet. But because the central bank is so fixated on keeping the currency where it is right now, I don't see them changing their mind anytime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roses, for this update, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
It's time now for a short break, and as soon as we are back, Aaron Akerejala will be here with the news on sports. Do stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. So we're now on Sports Stories with Aaron Akerejala. Good morning, Aaron.
Yes, good morning, ladies. Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Leila.
How you doing?
All right, I see somebody's missing and you're missing it.
I know.
Now, in the bit, actually moving on, quite a lot is happening in the world of sports. And over the course of the weekend, and one man has been gaining support, as a matter of fact, although it was a little bit overshadowed by some of the massive sporting events that happened over the course of the weekend, the Australian Open finals, the Super Bowl. But nevertheless, it's still good we mentioned it, and that's the former captain of the Super Eagles, John Mikel Obi, was on Saturday involved in a brawl with Fenerbahce's Emre Belözoğlu, who followed him following an alleged racial abuse of the former Chelsea midfielder. Let's tell you that the game happened in the Transport win over the opponents in a 2-1 clash. All right, the major talking point actually ensued when the Emery called Mikel. He used the N-word on Mikel, and Mikel did not take kindly to that. After the match, he confronted the player, and they had to be separated, literally, because it was almost turned into a fist fight. And at the end of the day, and the thing is, Emery, the player involved, is actually notorious for actually getting on people's nerves and using the N-word, which people have told him it's not a cool thing to do. Because
people have to tell him that in 2020.
Exactly, but it's unfortunate.
Something lacking in this.
But unfortunately, that's the world we find ourselves, because he looks at black players and always finds it hilarious to use the word.
But why hasn't he been disciplined up until now?
That's the big question everyone seems to be asking. Yeah. That why hasn't it been? Because this is not the first time it's happening.
He should get a life ban.
This is not the second time it's happening.
Unacceptable.
And it keeps going on and on. But with this happening, we are hoping that certainly the Turkish football authorities will actually look into this and take it a little bit more seriously. Because if a player goes about and sees every black player and derives joy in taunting them and calling them and using the very derogatory term that some might just take it on in the chin, but others like Mikel Obi, who has been known to always he actually goes, I think he loses his cool anytime somebody uses a word, because back in 2012, a referee claimed that the referee, Mark Clattenburg, then used the same phrase against him. And it went very ugly. At the end of the referee said he didn't do that.
As they would.
Yes, yeah. And it's...
I know honestly, we believe, right?
You know, honestly.
So the referee, they said he called him, he said, shut up, Mikel. And rather than shut up, he said that he thought Mikel said he heard him say monkey. And the closest player to Mikel, they claimed that they could not take his testimony seriously because he didn't understand too much English and might not have really understood the word. But at the end of the day, that actually was swept under the rug. But we're hoping things will be done to address the player and also send a message to others.
I certainly hope so. Even this whole situation that you've just described must be really frustrating for Mikel Obi.
Yes,
yeah. I mean, this previous one as well, where he had a witness who testified in his favor, and that person was dismissed. People will go to extraordinary lengths to deny blatant racism. And really, the thing to do is to actually address it and confront it head on. And this player, this Emery, has to be disciplined.
I hope it's still a developing story, because certainly investigations will go down, because if not so, Mikel will be fined for aggression and the rest of them, which is not acceptable in football. So investigations will go down. We are hoping that something is actually done about this.
What a world. Any more stories?
Yes, let's also tell you that FIFA are actually ending its 6-month intervention into African soccer governing body. And this happened on Sunday after the mission to speed up the reform of football on the continent was successfully completed. At the moment, FIFA, Fatma Samura, the lady on the screen there, who is the FIFA General Secretary, was being brought in as a general delegate for Africa, and her work has actually ended right now because FIFA, the most of last year, were thrown into a turmoil, corruption, allegations of a lot of financial malfeasance had gone on, and they felt that CAF were not in the right path to administer themselves. So they had to bring in somebody from FIFA, which several people kicked against, because they felt if things are not right with CAF, then let's CAF themselves handle the issue. That FIFA don't need to come all the way to handle the issue. But right now, FIFA are promising heaven and earth. But let's actually hope that this intervention would actually leave CAF a better organization and a cleaner organization than they actually met it.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thanks,
Always a pleasure.
See you tomorrow.